Hey friends, welcome to the Light and Life podcast. We're so glad you're joining in, listening in here today. This is different. This is unique. There is no Liza Cunningham. There is no Tim McConnell. You just get Chris. Both Chris's. This is a special day, so we call this the Chris Cast, Light and Life version, because I am your host today, Chris Cullins. And I am your modern worship lead here at First Press. And I am joined today, special guest Chris Owenby, the other Chris here on campus, who is our classic lead director. Welcome.
Good to be here, Chris.
Glad you're here. Hey, we're going to have fun with this one.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of an introduction to the listening body, as well as people that are jumping in and are just finding out a little bit about First Press. One of the things is that we have two modes of worship here at First Press that are active every Sunday. I get the pleasure of being on the modern side and then collaborating and working with you on the classic side, working with our sanctuary choir called Big Blue. And musicians from all over, and a pretty awesome thing. So we're glad you're here. You've been here now on campus how long?
I think this week actually marks 2 months.
2 months.
2 months, and it's flown by.
It has flown by.
Right.
Right.
It's a good thing. It feels good to be here.
It's a good thing. Okay, so but you're coming from Georgia.
Yeah.
And Georgia versus Colorado. You're here 2 months. What's that feeling like?
Yeah.
How much water have you had to intake? What is that?
I see that mine's a little.
You're draining it.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of water. Probably like double intake. But I don't know how much of that is due to the fact that I actually drink a ton of coffee. I love coffee. I drink water so I can drink coffee, but I do switch to decaf at some point. So a little more than Georgia, probably, if I'm being honest there.
Right.
But there's some other differences too. The mountains are a little bigger out here. It feels awesome all the time.
Right.
However, I hear it's going to get really cold, and you can tell, like, I got my jacket on, so I'm pretty cold-natured. So
a Georgia boy coming into that, if you're already cold-natured, that's going to be a little bit interesting as you jump into winter, as we are in the fall. Now, fall of Colorado is something that people come all over the world to see. So have you gotten to see a little bit of that?
Yeah, we've done some weekend drives. In fact, not this past week, but a couple weeks prior, each one of those weekends, we took the time to drive. We went out to West Cliff, went to Cripple Creek. That was cool, seeing all the aspens and beautiful. Yeah, it's awesome.
It's pretty, and it's different. I mean, there's the stuff in the northern Georgia into Tennessee, into the Carolinas. There's some gorgeous tree stuff. And I living in Tennessee for a while, we loved that, going down and seeing a lot of that area. But Colorado versus Georgia, you've got a lot of connections back in Georgia. We are feeling for the churches right now in Georgia.
Yeah.
And in the Carolinas, right? Going through some significant weather stuff. Has there been connections there that you've been able to talk with people and
them a little bit? When all that was happening, I definitely stayed in touch with parents, family. Thankfully, my family, and mine and Aaron's close friends and family, like they were all safe. My brother's a firefighter though, so he did travel down South Georgia, and there was quite a bit of damage, and he was saying lots of time to clean that up. So we feel for a lot of the people in the wake of that hurricane. So
praying for them, praying for the people that have had experiences or are in the throes of stuff coming. So the Lord does cool things and works through those moments to reveal His true nature and who He is, and His kindness and His grace to us. Tell us more, just for those people jumping in going, who is this Chris Owenby? Tell me about your family.
Yeah, sure. So my wife, Erin, and I, we are right now in northern part of the Springs here, renting until we kind of learn the lay of the land, although I feel like we've got a pretty good. There's also that interest rate thing too, right? You can't
seriously.
Take that.
Holy cow! Right.
So we have 3 kids. Abby, who's 14, Emma is 11, and Ben is 4. So we are pretty full season for the Owenbys. Aaron and I met in high school, and I'm Georgia native here, so I was born, raised in Georgia. Done a fair amount of traveling, and Erin and I have traveled a good bit, during our marriage. But in fact, when we first got married, we said, "Hey, you know what? She moved around a little bit from Texas, Oklahoma, found her way to Georgia. Her dad worked for Coke, so." Anyways, we met in actually middle school and were friends through middle school, and then started dating our senior year in high school, and then all through undergrad, got married. And when we first got married, said, "Hey, let's move somewhere else." I've always been pretty adventurous, and her too. But we just settled in Georgia. We're a family, and it was some really great communities that we've lived in, close to family. And this is kind of the first time we've done something like this, moved our entire family across the country.
It's a big step.
It is.
It's a big step. One of the fun notes that Chris and I are learning about each other and different things, the way our lives are connected more, is that yes, we both have married our high school sweethearts, and that teenage it's a unique thing. I think
people are saying,
"Oh, it's very sweet." And it is, because it's adorable. It's adorable. Yes, and it's awesome. Okay, so one of the things we're going to get into here in just a little bit, just as a teaser, keep listening, because we're going to dive in a little bit behind the curtain of what it means to do music composition, music creation, where songs come from, songs that we sing in church, songs that are played out in orchestras, whatever it is. We're actually going to look at that a little bit and maybe unveil a little secret on what is the mystery and the magic button on that. Right. And no, it's not AI. If you're curious right now, I'll just tease you right into that. But we'll talk a little bit about that. But as we get there, I do want to just tell us more about, because this is a big move. Mm-hmm. You did kind of uproot significantly and come to Colorado. Yeah. Talk a little bit about God's calling into that and kind of why.
Yeah, happy to. It's definitely the reason we're here. It felt like a call. We know for a fact it was a call. Mm-hmm. So give the Cliff Notes version of this story. Back in 2022, our middle kiddo, Emma, went into the hospital with appendicitis. I was serving at a church called Hillside Church in Woodstock, Georgia. Erin was on the ground in traditional real estate. So busy schedules. Three kiddos, Emma to the hospital. So a lot of things leading up to that, but her appendix ruptured. And she was in there, long story short, for 5 weeks, cleaning up the mess from that. Eventually got the thing out. You learn a lot about the appendix when your child's appendix ruptures. You think, hey, we're here at the hospital. Can't you go ahead and get this thing out? It's like, no, you find out there's a whole period to let the body do what it's going to do, and they clean it up. So anyways, that was a pretty traumatic experience, but we were trusting God through it all, and thankfully she's fine today. And God even brought some really cool provisions out throughout that experience. And I'll briefly mention Ruby, one of her actually she was the one of the custodians at the hospital, and she would come by Emma's room and she'd call her little butterfly. How's my little butterfly doing today? And she would encourage her and say, you keep working hard. They make you walk around the hospital after you've had some surgeries, and that was really encouraging. So God was providing in and through that situation, and brought her through the other side. She's great today. You couldn't even tell that she's had any medical issues. So, but that was hard on the family, right? I mean, especially the kiddos, and Abby being our oldest, processing that, hey, Emma's in the hospital. Mom and dad are kind of not in their normal work capacity now. The church was super supportive for me. Erin's boss was incredibly supportive. But we also knew that Erin's dad had some poor health, so that was kind of looming. We knew that God was probably calling him home soon. And he ended up passing in August of 22. Right. So it was a tough summer for the Owenbys, and God really put it on our hearts just to take a step back and really spend some time healing together as a family. So I worked with a church and at Hillside and said, hey, listen, God's calling me to step out of vocational ministry for this next season. I don't know how long that season is, but it's really just to help my family heal through this. And Aaron felt like, man, I need to pull back as well from work. And thankfully, you know, God's provision. And my experience is you know God's at work. Right. You may not feel him or see it in the moment, but we know through faith, right, and through experience. And in hindsight, wow, seeing the way that God ordered our step leading up to this huge move that we've made as a family. So to back up a little bit, you know, going through that as a family in the hospital and then Aaron's dad passing, we knew we needed to take that step back and heal together as a family. So we worked with the church, kind of set what that date would look like. I helped them transition into that new season with paving the way for the new worship director. Aaron stepped away from her position. We had started a side business prior to even the hospital experience, and God used that in that season to pay the bills, you know. The provision was there. How are we going to do this? Well, God's faithful. He's faithful. And so we did that for over a year. And towards the end of 23, started feeling this prompting to move on to the next thing. God, where are you calling us? And it was a real season of trust in that. You know, here I've been out of vocational ministry for over a year. And Erin's been out of her traditional real estate. So we're, you know, job applications, all these things, still running we were on Amazon e-commerce business, still running that business, still, you know, kids are in school doing their thing. But, you know, putting all these resumes out, and that's a job. That became our full-time job. And, you know, Tim McConnell, our lead pastor, right, has always been a good friend of mine. We served together at Eastminster about 10 years ago when he was in Georgia prior to First Pres. He started seeing all these, you know, I was asking him for his reference. And he said, well, Chris, we may be in a season where we're going to need a classic worship director. And can we keep that conversation open? I said, yeah, I'm actively applying to these positions, got close with a couple of churches, got an offer out in Fort Worth, and it just didn't feel right. And I'm not one to operate on feelings, but at the same time, you know, and
the Spirit's leading.
And the Spirit's leading, and one thing led to another, and this conversation opened up with First Pres. And never in my wildest dreams did I think we'd be moving to Colorado Springs, but we really felt this call. So we visited a few times, and, you know, immediately fell in love with the mountains and the air. But First Pres, and the first you know, interview process, you and I met, had a conversation. It was like, this could be awesome. The collaborative spirit, the you know, your heart resonated with me. I know you've expressed that, you know, mine resonated with you, and we had this sort of collaborative spirit
quick
together.
Bond,
Quick bond. And so just one thing after another, and I could go on and on, Chris, of just how God has provided. But you know, if I could summarize that entire experience, it was even though we're walking through this season of not maybe knowing with clarity the exact next step, just trusting God all the way. And we weren't perfect at it. I wasn't perfect at it. There were times like, God, what are you doing? What are you doing here? Like I've applied to like 20 churches and even some e-commerce business, because I had that experience. Like, is that where you need me? And you know, I will say this, like what God kind of downloaded in my spirit through that. I remember one time vividly in the truck, you know, my loud truck, driving around and hearing the voice of the Lord. Chris, this next move is nothing that you can strive for or try to work out. Continue to apply if that makes you feel better, but it will not change the outcome of what I have for you. And again, like, I'm very careful with this prophetic thing, but I felt that in my spirit, like, wow, God, you are ordering our steps, and I trust you. I continue to trust you. We trust you. And, you know, we know without a shadow of a doubt that God has led us here, that First Pres with Big Blue and with our classic worship team and our collaboration. Like, this is where we're supposed to be. And Aaron's job transferred over. It's like, wow, just one thing after another.
Yep.
The kids have acclimated so quickly, which is such a blessing.
That's
so
awesome.
We're happy to be here.
Well, it's a very, there's a clear testimony in the calling that you guys have had, and a wonderful answer to prayer here at First Press in the next season that God has for our ministry here, just in the heart of downtown Colorado Springs, and then reaching beyond Colorado Springs. And how do we do that well? And how do you continue to be light and life for the city? And you guys have just come right on in an incredible way. And we're so excited. And first 2 months have been a whirlwind.
Yeah.
This is so you jump into a season where it's like, hey, glad you're here. We're about to do Vision Weekend, and it's a big weekend where we combine both the modern and the classic side of worship into one big day.
Right.
And so one of those, that was kind of the first little understanding of, how could this collaboration work between the two Chris's? So let's get into that a little bit,
sure,
and just help people to kind of see what happens there, and then we can get into how we create some music in that.
I use AI. I don't know about
that's all we did. We just put it in a chat GPT, and all of a sudden everything came together. No, we did not, and I think that's the beauty of it, is that there is a sense of work. There actually is no magic button. If there's anything that's magical, it's when we are actually humbling ourselves to then be able to listen to God, and the Spirit's leading as we work together and see how the God is opening doors and strengths for each one of us, and you get to put that together and you see that beautiful kind of weave and that connection. That's something that we talked about when you first kind of showed up on campus, and where that kind of quick connection happened. At the same time, I got excited about seeing a little bit about your history, about how God has shaped you as someone that is a composer, that is a content creator, and having someone near me in that way that's similar enough yet also different, and I can see, God has shaped you in that way, in a different way. Tell us a little bit about your the content creation side of you, and you've been composing for a long time. There's some fun if you Google who you are. There's some piano books and stuff out there. Tell us a little bit about that.
A couple pictures too when I had a little more hair.
There's some couple pictures there.
Yeah. So when I was a kid and growing up in my home church, I had this. So I was around music. My family was very musical. Is very musical. Dad was leading music in our church, and my grandma was the pianist. Grandma was probably my earliest strong musical influence. I had a foundation of classical lessons. I was a really bad student though for a long time. Didn't practice, didn't do anything.
Right. Mainly piano.
Yeah, mainly piano. Yeah. But I didn't have that hook yet. And it was really my grandma who sat down at the piano one day, and she had these really she loved to wear these very big rings, and she loved to have her nails done, and she would just click and clack on the piano. So she sat me down one day and said, "Christopher, come over here. I want you to play this song." And so by rote, she taught me "We Are Standing on Holy Ground." Okay. And that was something we sung often in our church. So that was the hook, because I was like, wow, the music's not on the page. And I just learned this by my grandma sharing. I was probably 12, 13 at the time. Okay. That was the hook. So I realized, wow, I don't always have to play the, what's on the page. I can get off the page. Right. And so I started playing with our worship band. Modern worship for us was Gaithers. So that's what we played. Yeah. Loved it. And I still love the Gaithers to today. Right. Yeah. Because He Lives. We're going to do that in a couple weeks. Anyways, I had also this strong desire to write music. Yeah. In that style, and also moving more into contemporary Christian music. At the time, for me, it was Michael W. Smith, little early Hillsong, things like that. But yeah, as I was getting into high school, graduated high school, I realized I probably need to go to college and learn some other things. But I'm going to stick with music because I love music, and I feel like God's calling me to this. There was still this strong desire to compose, so I entered a program at LaGrange College where we focused on music composition. What I loved about it is that it met me where I was. It met me on the whole songwriting stage. And it was there though my my mentor, still a good friend to this day, Lee Johnson, he started sharing like some of his choral music with me, and oh my goodness, that was a hook. I fell in love with the choirs, like these you and I have talked about this, like just the sonorities that you can capture with the choir, the sound, the it's just a unique, expressive, beautiful sound. Special. And so that was what kind of pulled me back into classical music. So I became a good student at that point and said, I will practice, so did all those things and went on to Georgia State as well to pursue music composition more in the classical vein. And so, I've since those experiences just loved music of all styles, especially music for the church, music in both the modern worship sense and the classic sense, working with choirs and orchestras. And I particularly, and you've already hit on that, excited about merging those two on occasion. And as you said, we did that on Vision Sunday, which was fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. And that's I love how each one of us come into our lanes in a maybe a little bit different way, and God's carved that in our history in different ways.
Yeah.
You went back to being a good student. I never ended up actually going back to being a good student. I was like, I'm just gonna keep being creative. But yeah, I mean, that's for my side of it was on the production side of how do you produce this? How do you work with these different instrumentations? How do you work with different people's voices? And how do we navigate creating new content for them that expresses their best? And then you merge that together to make something beautiful. So, and that was kind of the thing for me at Belmont University was the idea of not necessarily, even though we joked about the degree was how to make a hit record, but in that it was how are you connecting really, really well with people, and how are you stirring their hearts towards something? How are you invoking some sort of feeling that they're going, I connect with that, and I want to resonate with that.
And just to jump off that point, you're exactly right, and I'd be remiss if I didn't say that as that student in school, like because you can fall into that trap of just writing music for the sake of writing music to learn a particular add a tool to your tool belt and write in a certain way, et cetera. But if you fall into that trap, you're right, you miss. And I love that you mentioned that Belmont's a great school, and the fact that you were focused on connecting. There's got to be that connectivity within the music that you're writing. I mean, otherwise, why are you writing the music? So for us, I think even a higher purpose and calling, right? Exactly. It's for the Lord first and foremost, for the glory of God, but to also bring people, draw them into a deeper sense of worship and understanding of who God is, and that's something that takes time, and I think for us, intentionality to connect with the Lord also and tie that into our craft, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
So let's pull back the curtain a little bit into we know that if we're writing sacred music, if you write sacred music well, that means you've been just really kind of bathing yourself in the Spirit so that there is clear direction, there's clear inspiration out of God's Word, out of multiple things that are coming into your life, but you're hoping, you're always waiting for that kind of Spirit-inspired moment. So for a good, just kind of look back at the curtain, at Vision Sunday, one of the things I got real excited about was even just us talking. I had done the work to write some of these songs for our church, songs about gathering, songs about expectation of what God's going to do when we gather together. You actually never know. And you're actually hoping for, if we're truly asking the Lord to do something amazing, that might be something that we're not expecting. Yeah. And it might be something that feels pretty mysterious. So those are kind of these songs that we're putting out there, but I wrote them in a very modern worship expression. So how do you make that work with a church that's going to be kind of blending together? And one of the gifts was you're like, hey, I've got some stuff I've written towards that. I've arranged some things I'm writing around that, arranging things for choir and some horn stuff, some orchestral type things, which was there's a beautiful gift to me as a composer, as a songwriter, to then say, oh my goodness, someone else sees not just this value in it, but also wants to connect in, collab, and join in making this even more beautiful, or even making it more approachable and accessible for others to use that. But there was not like some magic button that went into that. That takes work, right? And even when we came together, then when you're saying, hey, here's the parts, let's look at that. Right. So we're sitting in your office, and we're having to actually hammer that out a little bit, right? Like, hey, this is what happens here. What about that? Yep. And that's not some crazy mysterious thing. That is the two Chris's literally plunking out notes on the piano, going back to the screen, moving stuff around, going, okay, that actually, our sopranos can't sing that. The human voice doesn't go that high. Our basses don't drop down into sub-octaves, right? And knowing people, what was that like for you as far as how to merge these two together? Let's give a little bit of a behind the scenes.
Yeah, for sure. I'd even go back to one of our initial conversations in your office where we were just talking through the flow of that service and the songs that you just mentioned that you that resonated with your heart and for all the reasons you stated. And kind of the plan is where it always starts, right? The plan of how do you choose the songs? There's so much thought that goes into that, and you had done that work, thinking through the music, thinking through the flow, how we get from one moment in worship to the next, and then us kind of hashing through together. What is the instrumentation we're working with? What makes the most sense here? We decided brass, addition to the modern worship band, which they're fantastic, by the way.
Thanks. They are amazing.
And they're awesome, yeah. And then, of course, our big blue choir, right? So we knew there was that choral element. We knew there was that brass element now. And those were the pieces that we sort of had to meld in a way that worked with the rest of the musicians. And so... yeah, that process, I think, starts with a conversation of going through each song and articulating, like, what's the hope, like, what do we want the feel to be, and how do we make sure that it resonates with both modern and classic congregants and congregations, and the styles. We're one congregation, but we're worshiping in two modes, which we're very committed to, right? But we have this fun opportunity to collaborate. So it starts with a plan. And then we kind of go our separate ways for a minute. Work, I always joke about it with Chris, that we kind of lock ourselves away for a minute, and then we come back together. And so we did that a few times. And then I remember vividly rehearsal night as we're working through the parts together, kind of listening that last bit of, and actually it wasn't the last edit. The last edit was up on a Sunday morning, I think about 15 minutes before the service. Yeah, that's right. There are those moments too in worship. You just don't see.
Gotta go move a couple notes around. That's right.
So anyways, we're sitting in the office prior to the rehearsal, working through it and making those kind of last-minute editorial things like, hey, I want can the brass pick up on this cool guitar line I've got, that Bobby is shredding on, and those kinds of things. Yeah. And that led up to our rehearsal, which went, I thought, very, very well. Yeah. And, all the way up to Sunday morning where we're like, hey, trumpet note needs to change from this to this, and I think we're done.
Right. And I think a lot of people, that what's an interesting thing to note is that the way that instruments have been designed and created is that they kind of play in different keys.
Yep.
And so when you're trying to merge all that together, it's this kind of craziness that happens that you have to go, okay, if we're in the key of F, but this is a B flat instrument and all this kind of stuff.
Transposing
instruments, stuff all the time and making that work. There was a lot of that. That's where I was like incredibly grateful, because I was like, okay, there's someone that not only is understanding the heart of this moment and this song, but actually can then put it into practical use by shifting that around. I think one of the things that's about songwriting, so on a secular side, you're kind of creating these experiences, these songs that are kind of manipulating emotions. And not kind of, that's literally what it is, right? So we're trying to manipulate emotions so somebody has that feeling, and then that's something that they want to come back to, or they elect that, or that connected with their story, their life, whatever it may be. When you're writing songs about life, love, experiences, that type of a deal, when you step into a worship environment,
there
right?
You go.
We're not trying to manipulate emotions at this point. We're trying to just create an opportunity for someone to encounter the presence of God. And yet the methods by which we do that, so we're still using notes and song and music, which is a very emotional thing. It stirs something in us. Music stirs something in, which is why the scripture is full of this, where it's like, Psalm 96, sing a new song unto the Lord. This is not, hey, go write write a cool page and have a great podcast to the Lord. It's like sing a new song to the Lord, right? So there is this understanding that music is going to be a passageway and a connection point for us into the presence of the Lord. Us doing that together was a beautiful thing in that moment, and has continued to be that. I'm excited as we talk about things like writing songs for Christmas, writing songs for special moments as we celebrate our risen Savior for Easter, and at the same time looking at stuff that's, hey, how do we help people just sit and dwell in the presence of the Lord in different ways? One of the things that I'll say that was really super fun as of late is that we did the worship filming, and a lot of the songs that have come out of our worship, the modern worship side of First Press, and songs that I've written, Isaac's written, and we've co-written with others as well. We just got to film that, and at Glen Erie, it was gorgeous. And one of the more beautiful moments of that day when it comes to collaboration was watching you crawl under a portable stage to make sure that it was level so someone wouldn't fall through or we wouldn't have someone trip.
And you were having fun.
You were having fun, but the willingness just to like dive in the dirt and make that work was this just a beautiful expression of, hey, we're in this together.
Right.
This was not something that you weren't even on that platform. You weren't even on that stage. You were a worshiper there in the congregation, but you led through that in a beautiful way. And I'm excited about how we were able to do that together.
Yeah.
I'm excited about the future of First Press, having these moments of worship where we get to come together and two modes of worship often can be separated in their own ways to two different churches. And I'm excited about this merging together often so that we do have one church headed towards one goal, which is sharing the love of Jesus out into the world. This has been an amazing time together.
It's been fun.
We're scratching the surface in conversations. I want to dive deeper into some more things later on, and maybe Tim and Eliza will let us dive into that, or we'll have its own thing where you can just kind of see maybe even some videos and pictures behind the scenes and what happens as we dive into the studio, creative suite, as we work through kind of the nuts and bolts of content creation. So glad you're here. Thanks for letting me host. This is super fun. I know we went a little long today. Friends, thanks for staying with us and listening in. We're so excited that you're jumping into the Light and Life podcast. Subscribe it, share that with your friends. If maybe you've got questions or topics you want us to be able to talk about, or just you're like, I'm really curious about this, can you dive into that? Send us an email at podcast@firstpresscus.org. And we will look forward to hearing from you and look forward to seeing you soon. Come hang out with us. We'll see you.